to another Tragic Star of the Week, only this week it's a director. His name was William Desmond Taylor, and his murder is still talked about today and remains unsolved. This video looks into the various suspects, some of the biggest stars of the day whose careers were ruined by this, and it also looks into William Desmond Taylor himself. So I hope that you enjoy the video. Please like and subscribe. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Tragic Star of the Week. This week we're going to be talking about not a star, but a famous director of the silent film era, and his name was William Desmond Taylor. And he doesn't have to be a star because his life is so fascinating, and he worked in Hollywood with all of the great stars. So let's get started. William Desmond Taylor was born in Ireland into a wealthy family in the late 1800s, and he graduated from a prestigious college over there. And back then it was the thing to do for wealthier families to send their children off to like dude ranches in America to toughen them up or something. So they sent him off to a dude ranch in Kansas, and he just decided he wasn't going to come back to Ireland. And he participated in a theater group there at the Dude Ranch. I find odd there was a theater group at the Dude Ranch, but okay. Anyway, so he just decided right then and there he was not going to come back to Ireland. So he moved to New York and got a job at an antique store, a prestigious antique store on Fifth Avenue. And he met the daughter of the owner of the antique store, and her name was Ethel May Hamilton. They got married and had a daughter, and they had a life in New York. They were moving in the social circles. He joined the yacht club, and he was known as a partier and a gentleman about town, and he was also known as a philanderer and a ladies' man, so apparently had multiple affairs. And I'm not sure, because you'll understand later where all of this came from. But apparently leading this lifestyle was just a bit too much for him. So one day in 1908, when he was 36, he just vanished. And his family thought that he maybe had amnesia or something and that he would come back. They thought maybe he was having a mental breakdown or had an injury, but he never came back. He moved all the way across the country to Hollywood and started a new life and got a new name for himself, William Desmond Taylor, instead of William Dean Tanner. So there you go. This is how William Desmond Taylor's life started out. It's like, okay, he's one person over here and then he's another person over there. Well, the reason for this was because he was actually living a heterosexual lifestyle in New York when he was not heterosexual. And back in those days, being other than heterosexual was really tough and was not accepted. And I just think that the pressure of leading that lifestyle got to him, so he abandoned his wife and daughter and came over to Hollywood, where everybody comes to reinvent themselves and be whatever they want. So in Hollywood, he began acting, and he acted in a few westerns. So he was handsome enough to be an actor. He began acting in a few westerns and things like that. And but his career never really took off as an actor. And he was drafted into the Army. And when he got back from the Army, he decided he was going to try his luck in directing behind the camera. And that's where he really shined, and he became this really good director. Everybody wanted to work with him, like Quentin Tarantino or Steven Spielberg or whatever, or, any of the number of directors you can think of today that are really trendy. He became that type of director, and all the stars wanted to work with him. And one of the stars that he particularly liked and became very good friends with was the brilliant comedian and pioneering director in her own right, the comedian Mabel Normand. Mabel Normand was a simple girl with no formal education. I don't think she graduated from high school. And when she met this sophisticated and handsome director, she immediately probably fell in love with him. But they became very good friends. And being the kind person that he was, William Desmond Taylor decided he was going to mentor her and take her under his wing and try to save her, because she was a frail creature emotionally and physically, and she had a very bad addiction to drugs. And he was going to try to save her. At one point, he even confronted her drug dealers and told them that he was going to have them arrested if he ever saw them on the set again, because they'd actually come on the set and provide her with narcotics. So they would have these long soirees in his library where he would read poetry and great literature to her, and they would listen to classical music, and he was trying to broaden her horizons. And she was lapping all this up, and he would give her books to read. And this is important because she was the last person to see him the night that he was alive. They had had one of their sessions where they were reading great literature and poetry, and he had given her one of his books from his vast library to read, and she had signed out with a kiss and had left. And it was only a few minutes later that he would be shot and killed. And Mabel Normand, since she was the last person to see him alive, was dragged into this scandal, questioned at length, and I don't think she was ever considered a real suspect, but they maybe thought that the people she hung around with that provided her with her narcotics might have done it, because he actually threatened to have them arrested. So on the morning of February 2nd, William Desmond Taylor's body was discovered in his Hancock mansion. He was in his living room. He had been shot in the back once. He had a 2-carat diamond ring on and $178 in cash, which was the equivalent of $1,000 today, and a list of suspects a mile long. And to this day, his murder remains unsolved. So then the other suspects were Mary Miles Minter, the tragic child star of the early film days, who was trying to make the transition into adult star, but it wasn't going very well for her. And she had a bit of a schoolgirl crush on the handsome, sophisticated director, William Desmond Taylor. And some people think she might have killed him out of a jealous streak. Maybe she thought that Taylor was more interested in Mabel Normand, when the truth was he was not interested in women at all in that regard. He only wanted to be kind to women and to help them, but he wasn't interested in women romantically. And I believe that Mary Miles Minter probably had an alibi, so that leaves her mother, Shelby, that everybody's sure. Charlotte Shelby, the horrible stage mother of Mary Miles Minter. Everyone's so sure that Charlotte Shelby must have killed him because she happened to own a gun of the same type as he was murdered with, which are a dime a dozen. And the reason most people believe this is due to the book A Cast of Killers by Sidney Kirkpatrick, which was based on interviews with the famous silent film director King Vidor, who decided to play amateur detective and try to solve the murder of William Desmond Taylor himself. And I guess after years of looking into this, he came to the conclusion that it was Charlotte Shelby. Well, Charlotte Shelby was looked into very carefully by the police and the detectives, and they harassed this woman for decades. 3 district attorneys were this close to pinning it on Charlotte Shelby, but they were never able to muster up the evidence to do it. She finally fled America because she was being harassed so badly by the cops and the press. They were sure she was the killer and that she'd gotten away with it. My point is, why would she kill this goose that laid the golden egg? Because literally William Desmond Taylor was the only thing standing between her and poverty, because he was the only person in Hollywood who was willing to work with her daughter at that time, because she was considered box office poison and just simply wasn't considered a viable person to put it as a major star in anyone's movies. Only William Desmond Taylor was still hiring Mary Miles Minter. So why would Charlotte Shelby kill him? I know there's this theory that she secretly was in love with him herself and she was jealous of her daughter, and if she couldn't have him, nobody could have him. That just doesn't wash with me, and I will not believe, no matter what you say, that Charlotte Shelby killed William Desmond Taylor. That's my opinion. The least well-known suspect, and the most strange, is a very minor actress at the time named Margaret Gibson. She had a minor criminal record and for petty theft and performing abortions, and she was known to the police at the time. But she was working in the industry. It's not even clear whether or not she actually crossed paths with William Desmond Taylor, and nobody knew her or even thought about her in regards to this murder until she decided to confess to it on her deathbed in 1964. This is literally the only thing tying her to the William Desmond Taylor murders, is this deathbed confession. I don't buy it. I think she was looking for recognition or fame wherever she could find it in her last days, because it had eluded her during her life. So I don't take her as a serious suspect. The one that I really think doesn't get enough attention, and is, in my opinion, is probably the most viable of the suspects, is a man named Edward Sands. But this is probably not his real name. He had numerous aliases at the time, and had a shady past, and no one was really sure where he came from. He had a Cockney accent sometimes, and he had a different accent at other times. He was in William Desmond Taylor's employ as a valet and a cook, and he did other things. And it's rumored that Edward Sands and William Desmond Taylor might not have been just employer-employee. They might have been lovers, because Edward Sands was handsome and young. And this might have been the case because he behaved like a petulant child rather than an employee of Taylor's. And eventually he got himself in trouble by forging checks in Taylor's name and crashing his car and totaling his car. And so Taylor finally fired him and let him go. But he continued to harass Taylor, sending him nasty notes. He also burglarized Taylor's home, leaving muddy footprints all over his bed. If that's not a personal statement, I don't know what is. This guy was fully capable of committing these murders, I feel. He was jilted. Taylor had rejected him. Taylor had fired him and humiliated him. And he was out on the streets, probably with very little means of surviving. And I feel that he was the one that was waiting in the wings, waiting for Mabel Norman to leave so that he could go in and finish Taylor off. Because this man simply vanished after the murders and was never seen again. So the cops never had a chance to question him. They never had a chance to really investigate who he really was. I am positive Edward Sands was not his real name. He is, in my opinion, the prime suspect for this murder, and he's never really been truly investigated. And so there you have it. That is my take on the William Desmond Taylor murders. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you'll tune in next week for next week's Star of the Week. His story is featured in my second book, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, yada, 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 I know. And please don't forget about my books, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead, and my novel, Goodbye Angel, Goodbye When Dreams Aren't Enough, all available on Amazon in the link in the description of the page, and I'll probably link it in the description in this video as well. So again, check out my page, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.